Hello folks, Alex here. This is Alex Unabridged. Welcome back to the channel if that is the case. So yes, it's time today for episode 2 in my short story roulette series, where I spin a wheel and roll some dice and pick 3 short stories each time to read from the multitude of anthologies I have on my shelves and in my digital collections. Just to kind of try and make a dent really in them and to, help me read some more short stories. So let's dive straight in to the second trio of shorts that I picked at the end of episode 1, and then we'll pick 3 more for next time. A bit of a spoiler warning for the stories in this. Obviously I'll try and keep it to minimal, but I do want to be able to kind of discuss, sort of things about the short stories. So there is, you've been warned, basically. There might be some spoilers. If there's any major spoilers, I will give you another warning, essentially, so you can skip ahead if you want. So to the first story then, which was The Compleat Werewolf by Anthony Boucher, and that was from this book, this anthology called Unnatural Creatures.
He surveyed himself in the mirror. He looked exactly what he was, save for the unwanted wrinkles in his conservative single-breasted grey suit. A quiet academician, a little better built, a little more impulsive, a little more romantic than most, perhaps, but still just that. Professor Wolf. The rest was nonsense, but there was, that impulsive side of him suggested, only one way of proving the fact, and that was to say the word. "All right," said Wolf to his reflection, "I'll show you." And he said it. The pang was sharper and stronger than he'd remembered. Alcohol numbs you to pain. It tore him for a moment with an anguish like the descriptions of childbirth. Then it was gone, and he flexed his limbs in happy amazement. But he was not a lithe, fleet, free beast. He was a helplessly trapped wolf, irrevocably entangled in a conservative, single-breasted grey suit.
So yes, in this we meet the academic Wolf, who is down on his luck, essentially, after his wife, who's a Hollywood film star, has left him because he's basically too boring, he's too ordinary. One night, as he's propping up a bar and burdening the bartender with his woes, he meets a magician named Ozymandias, who tells him that he is a werewolf, that Wolf is a werewolf, and shows him how to transform. Wolf sees his newfound supernatural talents as a perfect way to win his wife back, because he's not ordinary anymore. But when he does show her how special he is, and what he can do now, he doesn't bank on her having an agenda of her own. So that's where I'll leave that synopsis for that one. My thoughts on this one then. This will definitely be a short discussion from me because unfortunately I detested this one. Really didn't like it at all. This is not for me at all. I found the writing style quite stilted, particularly the dialogue. It is meant to be a humorous werewolf story. I think for me, meant to be, being the operative phrase. It just feels a bit pretentious, to be honest, and I just didn't like that element of it. It just did nothing for me whatsoever. I spent a lot of time rolling my eyes. The story was quite meandering, and I just never really got drawn into it. I think largely because of the style, the way it's told. I was very ready to be done with it 10 pages in, and it's 80 pages long. It's a very long short story, and way too long in my eyes. So DNF. Not for me at all. Your mileage may vary if you want to give it a crack, but I just hope that when I come back to read the other stories in this volume, Unnatural Creatures, they're all different authors, then I hope that it's significantly better suited, the next one, to my tastes than The Compleat Werewolf. So yes, not a success to start off this trio of short stories. Okay, on to the second one then, which was The Baronet's Craze by Mrs. H.L. Cox, from this book, Cornish Horrors, Tales from the Land's End. This is one of the wonderful British Library Tales of the Weird series.
About an hour after midnight, I felt I must again take a look at the house in which, perhaps, my Gertrude was immured, and, if possible, enter the grounds. The gates, I knew, were always locked at nightfall, but I had observed a gap in the bank or hedge near a small plantation of firs, and almost in front of the castle, although hidden by the trees. I easily got through, and was at once attracted by seeing a bright light shining through the blinds of a solitary room situated in the turret. Shadows as of several people moved rapidly across it. Something particular evidently was going on. Could it in any way be connected with Gertrude? I stood riveted to the spot, under shelter of a large tree, and where the faint beams of the moon did not penetrate. Ere long the hall door was opened, and I could just discern 4 persons carrying out a huge case, apparently very heavy. It was borne on slings, not more than a foot from the ground. After taking a few steps, the people set it down and rested for a minute or two. They did this several times.
So in this then we meet Hugh Bertram, a well-to-do young man from London, who falls in love with Gertrude Sinclair, who is the daughter of a baronet. Gertrude is visiting London from Cornwall, where her and her father live. She's visiting her aunt, and Hugh is a good friend of her aunt, and that's how they meet. But Gertrude's father, the baronet, is, well, crazed, hence the title, I think, the baronet's Craze. He's crazed after the death of his other daughter many years ago, after she was left at the altar and seemingly died of a broken heart. The baronet learns of this blossoming relationship between Gertrude and Hugh, and he recalls her to Cornwall immediately. Hugh, of course, follows, wants to try and find Gertrude and find the estate, and attempts to persuade the baronet to allow him to marry Gertrude. But after being sent on his way, given his marching orders after a bit of an argument, Gertrude disappears, and Hugh sees a clandestine burial and funeral essentially being performed in the dead of night. And I will leave that synopsis there. So the thoughts on this one. I really liked this one. It's not like, a wow story or an amazing story, but it's just a really good, enjoyable story. It's not really what I'd call horror, I would say. It's mystery. It's definitely gothic. There's that kind of darkness to it, kind of a melancholic quality to it. But it does have a happy ending, and I did like that. I think the atmosphere of it was great. I think the kind of the description and stuff, it got Cornwall right. It was good. It felt evocative of the locations that it's set in when it comes to Cornwall, the Cornwall sections. And the language in it is, in general, it has an economy to it that I like. It's not flowery. It does the job well, but it's not purple. It's not overly descriptive, but it still manages to evoke those kind of the atmosphere, the setting, etc. And it keeps things moving at a steady clip as well. It's quite straightforward. It's quite succinct. It is of its time, I think. In terms of in a charming way. There's some more melodrama, I think, in the some of the sort of horror sections or the darker sections, particularly when it comes to dialogue and in some of the drama and some of the arguments and things like that. It gets a little bit melodramatic, but that to be expected and well done. It wasn't an eye-rolly kind of way. It was just an enjoyable melodrama, and it works in this context. I think the way that the author wrote the dialogue for some of the locals or the household staff at the baronet's estates amused me quite a bit. It's somewhat of a kind of a stereotyped vernacular, should we say. But it wasn't a bad thing. It just made me laugh a little as a 21st century reader. It was kind of what you'd expect, really. But yeah, overall, I had a good time with this. It's an accessible story. Like I've said before, like when I read some Victorian literature particularly, I sometimes struggle with the difference in language, like in the difference in sentence structures, syntax, that kind of thing. Just, you know, an older, more archaic way of writing. But this was, you know, very easy for me to kind of get into. There was no problems there. It was really accessible. And it just kind of carries you along without realizing it kept my attention throughout. It was, you know, it had enough mystery to kind of keep me going with it and stuff like that. And as I say, it was nice to have a story with a happy ending, especially when I know a lot of the stuff that I read will be like horror stuff, which probably won't have happy endings. So yeah, impressed with that one. I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, definitely better than the first one. Okay then, number 3 was The Book of Blood by Clive Barker.
The dead have highways. They run unerring lines of ghost trains, of dream carriages, across the wasteland behind our lives, bearing an endless traffic of departed souls. Their thrum and throb can be heard in the broken places of the world, through cracks made by acts of cruelty, violence and depravity. Their freight, the wandering dead, can be glimpsed when the heart is close to bursting, and sights that should be hidden come plainly into view. They have signposts, these highways, and bridges and laybys. They have turnpikes and intersections. It is at these intersections, where the crowds of dead mingle and cross, that this forbidden highway is most likely to spill through into our world. The traffic is heavy at the crossroads, and the voices of the dead are at their most shrill. Here, the barriers that separate one reality from the next are worn thin with the passage of innumerable feet.
Okay, I'm probably going to go into a bit more of the synopsis here, but so spoiler if you haven't read it, spoiler warning. Skip ahead if you want to like miss out this bit of the synopsis. So this is the first story in the first volume of Barker's Books of Blood series of short story collections, and it serves as the framing story for the rest of the Books of Blood stories. We meet Dr. Florescu, who is a parapsychology researcher, and she's investigating a notoriously haunted house. 65 Tollington Place is the house. And to aid in her investigation, she has brought on board a charismatic young man called Simon McNeil, who claims to be a medium, but is in actuality an opportunistic fraudster who fakes supernatural phenomena and poltergeist activity and all that kind of stuff to gain Mary's favour and academic attention. But unbeknownst to Simon, the house does actually genuinely sit on a crossroads at the highway of the restless dead, basically, where the restless dead travel. And the dead are particularly happy that Simon is mocking them, essentially. So they break through into the living realm and teach him a lesson. They hold him down and they carve their own untold histories, confessions, tragedies, etc., directly onto his body, into his flesh. And when Mary discovers him, McNeil has been transformed into a living manuscript, essentially a literal book of blood. And so Mary then sets to devotes herself essentially to keeping McNeil alive and reading and transcribing the stories written on his skin, and that's obviously where the framing comes in. All the stories that come thereafter are the ones that have been written by the dead on Simon McNeil's flesh. So there you go. Yes, nice dark little story. Thoughts on this one then? Yeah, I mean, I already knew I liked Barker, and these are rereads, I have to say. I've not read these in at least 15 years, but these are rereads. But I had forgotten how much I really like Barker's style. There's a lyricism to his prose, but also a real directness. And I think that's quite a difficult thing to get right. He always evokes fantastic sense of atmosphere. And it's the same in this, absolutely. I love the tone of this. It is dark, it's ominous, there's some nastiness in there. Simon McNeil is a nasty character, or a very unlikable character, although Mary's not necessarily the most likable character. They are flawed characters, and I think that's something else that I think Barker does well. But despite what he's writing, I mean, he never shies away from darkness. In fact, he leans heavily into darkness. And he's writing some quite gory, some unsettling, some disturbing stuff. And his writing evokes, striking visuals for me, definitely. I think, he's one of the strongest horror writers for me, in terms of evoking a visual sense of what's going on, which is why I find his stuff so unsettling, I think. But at the same time as he's writing that and making this quite visceral kind of impression on me as a reader, he's also somehow able to make it beautiful in a way. Do you know what I mean? There's a sensuality, I think, to some of the horror in this, which sounds weird, but I think probably if you know Barker, you probably know what I'm getting at. He definitely is one of those horror authors that really taps into an emotional reaction for me. He definitely sucks me in very, very quickly on whatever he writes, and this was no different. As soon as I started with this, it was like I barely remember kind of the time passing. It's one of those, I was just into the story again. But it definitely has made me want to go back and read some more of his long form stuff as well. In fact, I've got Cabal on one of my kind of reading project lists, my US versus UK 20th century horror project, which I'm really behind on, as with most of my reading projects. So I might go back and start there again with Cabal, and a good way to get me back into that little reading project of mine. So there we go. That's this episode's 3 stories. One great one, which was the Barker. One very good one I really enjoyed, which was the Baronet's Craze, and then one, the Compleat Werewolf. So you can't win them all, but I think we're still doing very well. So the next 3 then for episode 3, I have, as I've done with the previous 2 lots, spun the wheel and rolled the dice just before I sat down to film this talky bit. So I'll ping backwards and forwards while we get these sorted. So the first one then.
Okay, number 1 then is We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. So that's the anthology, the Philip K. Dick anthology. And there are 25 stories in this. So add those 2 together, 6 and 5, and we get story number 11.
Okay, so the first one is this one. So a bit of Philip K. Dick, which is excellent. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale is the collection. I don't think number 11 is the story. That is the only one that I've read out of this collection actually so far, so hopefully it's not. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, it's a story called Return Match, which I have no clue about whatsoever. So we'll see what Mr. Philip K. Dick has got for me on that one. Okay, next one.
Number 2 then is From the Depths. Oh yes, that's the British Library Tales of the Weird. There are 15 stories in this, I think. So it's a D20. And we've got story number 7.
Okay, so that is this one. Excellent. From the Depths and Other Strange Tales of the Sea, edited by Mike Ashley. And this is another British Library Tales of the Weird collection. Excellent. This is the newest one that I own in terms of the one I got most recently. Story number 7 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, The Mystery of the Waterlogged Ship by William Hope Hodgson. I'm quite excited about that. Let me just check I've done that right. Yes, excellent. I have read a couple of bits of William Hope Hodgson. I've read another kind of nautical / aquatic horror of Hope Hodgson's before, called Tropical Horror, I think, something like that. Tropical Terror, Tropical Horror. And I really enjoyed that, so I'm very much looking forward to some more nautical / aquatic horror of Hope Hodgson's. Okay, third one then.
And the final one is The Mammoth Book of Folk Horror. Stephen Jones edited. And there are 19 stories in this, so another D20. And it's 19.
Okay then, that is this one, which I have on my iPad, The Mammoth Book of Folk Horror. And it was story 19, wasn't it? Which is saying that there's only 19 stories in it. That would be easy to find. It'd be the last one, which is The Gypsies in the Wood by Kim Newman. Never read any Kim Newman before, so that will be excellent to try some Kim Newman stuff. So there you go, those are the next 3 then, and when I have read those, I will jump on and chat about them and pick some more, hopefully, because I'm enjoying this, it's excellent. But that will do from me today. Thank you very much for watching, folks. As always, do drop your thoughts, comments, etc. down below. Do let me know if you've read any of the stories I've talked about today, or I have read any of the ones that I'm about to read that you think are particularly good. I will be back in a couple of weeks, either with a wrap-up, another short story roulette episode with these 3 that I've just picked, or with my August wrap-up, because I've managed to get through quite a bit for Garb August and some other stuff as well, so I might drop that in a couple of weeks. But I will see you in a couple of weeks for sure. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.